ID targets as we're shooting around the vehicle, right? The first shooter who went, most of the rounds were from the center over toward the right. He's a right-handed shooter. A couple even came off the side. You can see one hit the pillar here. So in shooting around these vehicles, one of the things that we see, or it could be around cover or whatever, but as we come here, I'm just going to demonstrate this real quick. If I take this target, for example, right in the back, and again, the first shooter, there's some impacts on the white edge and they're offset to the right. The second shooter had a few more that were in the middle, right? But this is one of the things that we commonly see when we're trying to use the vehicle or one of these pieces of cover, whether it's your VTAC barrier, barrels, or whatever. When the guys don't want to overexpose, they tend to start doing this. They start to lean out and they're finding the target, and then they don't want to go any further, and you can come in a little closer, but what they'll do is they'll start to turn the gun and try not to lean out further, and they'll turn the gun in to try to sneak that shot in. But what happens is that winds up taking the impacts to that inside angle. So if you're doing it from the right, you're cheating it in at the wrist, and if you're doing it to the left, you'd be cheating it in at the wrist to the left. So this line is important. If we look at this line with the wood over the top of the sights, I need to place, when I'm doing my scan, my shoulder needs to be essentially in a straight line behind this to make sure that I don't start drifting my rounds by making that fluctuation at the wrist. So whatever the line off the edge of the cover is the line that should come straight back to the shoulder. So if I am coming around this corner, when I get to the point where I have the shot, it's right here and my shoulder's behind this line all the way in. If my shoulder's not behind, then we tend to do this and we start to sneak it in and start to bend at that wrist to try to make it get in without trying to expose any further. But the reality is, for me to have a line at the target, right, my head has to be behind the sights. So as much as it sucks to expose our head, if we're using the sights and we're looking through the sights, we have to do it, right? So to do it like this, right, with my shoulder back, isn't really protecting me anymore than to do it like this, where my shoulder's stacked behind the sights to come in and keep that angle. So as I'm looking, it would be here. I'm not leading with the front sight post kicking the back of the gun out. I'm leading with the front sight post and I'm pivoting from here, so my shoulder needs to move on an angle. It's an arch. It's not a straight line. We're making an arch because we have a point that we're pivoting around. Does that make sense? So as this is here, as my shoulder comes around, it's like this. I'm leaning out and there it is. But I have to keep that in line. So there's my peak and then I come back. There's my peak and then I come back. Not this. Not trying to cant here at the wrist. So if you're shooting around a barricade, if you're shooting around the vehicle or anything like that, and you see that your rounds are constantly kind of going to that inside angle, right? Check your wrist, check the placement of your shoulder, and make sure we're not deviating here. Make sure we're keeping this a good solid line, and we're pivoting focused in just off the edge of that intersection, of that apex point. Cool, hope that helps.